I always thought I knew what quiet meant. Growing up in a small coastal town in Maine, silence was just part of the rhythm of life. I could hear the waves crashing from my bedroom window, the occasional car rolling slowly down our narrow street, the sound of my dad's boots clunking on the hardwood floors when he came in from his morning walks. That was silence to me. Peaceful, predictable, full of little background noises that made the world feel safe. But real silence, the kind that echoes in your chest when your world shifts. I didn't understand that kind of quiet until the year everything in my life stopped. My name is Rachel. I'm 24, and last year, for the first time in my life, I lost someone I wasn't ready to lose. Her name was Emma, and she was my best friend. We were only a few months apart in age, both born in the same small hospital, both daughters of two mothers who had been childhood friends themselves. Emma was the kind of girl who could make anyone feel seen. She had this laugh that sounded like it belonged in a movie theater, warm and genuine and loud in a way that made you smile, even if you didn't know why she was laughing. We were inseparable from kindergarten onward. First play dates, then school projects, then high school sleepovers and prom nights and college applications. We didn't end up going to the same college. I stayed in Maine for a local liberal arts program, and she went to Boston, but we never lost touch. Every Sunday at 7 p.m., without fail, we FaceTimed. It became our tradition. No matter how busy life got, Sundays were ours, until they weren't. It happened in early March. Emma had been feeling off for a few weeks, tired, a little dizzy, some trouble with her vision. She brushed it off at first. She always hated doctors, but eventually, her roommate convinced her to go get checked out. I remember our last FaceTime call so vividly. She was sitting in her little apartment kitchen, sipping peppermint tea, her dark curls pulled back in a messy bun. "They think it might be a brain tumor," she said casually, like she was talking about the weather. I felt my stomach drop. "What? Are you serious?" She nodded. "I'm getting an MRI next week." I wanted to cry, but she was smiling, calm, as if this was just another bump in the road. That was Emma, stronger than all of us. The MRI came, then the diagnosis. It was a glioblastoma, aggressive, fast-moving, the kind of tumor you don't just recover from. They told her she might have a year if treatment went well. She lasted 5 months. I spent every weekend in Boston after the diagnosis. I'd take the bus from my tiny town and crash on the pull-out couch in her apartment. We talked about everything, our childhood memories, our dreams, the boys we had crushes on in high school, what it meant to be afraid. She started chemo, then radiation. Her hair fell out. Her laughter grew quieter. She began to sleep more and talk less. I started writing letters to her when she was too tired to speak. Just little things, stories from our childhood, a dumb poem I wrote when we were 12, the lyrics to the song we used to dance to in the kitchen. I didn't know if she could read them, but I left them on her bedside anyway. The last weekend I saw her, she was barely conscious. Her mom and I sat with her for hours. I held her hand and played her favorite music, the one playlist she used to blast in her car when we drove around aimlessly after school. She passed away 3 days later, and then came the silence. Real silence. Not peaceful, not gentle, but sharp and cold and consuming. I went back home to Maine and didn't talk to anyone for weeks. My phone rang, and I ignored it. My inbox filled up, and I let it. I stopped going to work. I just existed. I sat in my room and listened to the clock tick and wondered how the world could just keep moving. But Emma wouldn't have wanted that for me. She was the kind of person who always believed in forward motion, in living, really living. I could almost hear her voice in my head telling me to get up, to go outside, to take a deep breath. So I did. One morning, I walked to the cliffs near the ocean where we used to go as kids. We'd bring sandwiches and sit on the rocks and talk for hours. I sat there alone for the first time in years and read one of the letters I had never given her. In it, I had written, "I don't know what I'll do without you, but I promise I'll try to live a life you'd be proud of." And that became my compass. I started small. I went back to work part-time. I started therapy. I joined a book club, even though I didn't know anyone there. I made it through entire days without crying. Then weeks. I began to laugh again, real, full laughs that felt like tiny rebellions against the sadness. I took a road trip by myself that summer, something Emma and I always talked about doing. I visited places we'd dreamed about: Niagara Falls, Lake Placid, the Adirondacks. I took pictures and wrote little journal entries for each place, like a travel diary she'd never read, but that somehow still felt shared. Along the way, I met people who reminded me that the world is still full of connection. A retired teacher who gave me directions in Vermont, a waitress in upstate New York who noticed my puffy eyes and slipped me a cookie on the house, a musician playing violin on a street corner who smiled when I stopped to listen, and I started to feel something I hadn't in months: hope. Grief never left me. It didn't vanish or get replaced, but it softened. It became part of the background instead of the center. I learned how to carry it without letting it drown me. By the time autumn came around, I decided to do something I'd been putting off for years: apply for graduate school. Emma always said I should. "You were born to teach," she told me once during one of our FaceTime calls. "Kids would be lucky to have someone like you." I applied to 3 programs, got into 2. I'll be starting my master's in education this fall. And last week I did something I'd been building up to for months. I took a small glass bottle, wrote one final letter to Emma, and sealed it inside. Then I walked to the edge of the same cliff where we spent so many afternoons, and I tossed it into the sea. It felt like goodbye, but also like hello, to a new chapter, to the girl I used to be and the woman I'm becoming. I still miss her every single day. I still dream about our road trip that never happened. I still find myself reaching for my phone on Sunday nights at 7, but I also smile more now. I notice little things: birds on windowsills, the way the sun shines through pine trees, the way strangers say thank you when you hold the door. Emma gave me the gift of knowing how short and fragile and beautiful life can be. And in the silence she left behind, I found something unexpected: myself.